Hello, explorers. Welcome to another live stream of Being Immersed. Today, we're exploring how intensity in immersive environments shapes the stories we tell and experience. So, intensity to me refers to the depth, power, and emotional impact of immersive experiences. And as you could see from that video clip from A Quiet Place, it's definitely building intensity. For creators, the challenge lies in balancing sensory elements to sustain engagement without overwhelming. And the strategic silence of A Quiet Place with that zooming of the plane achieves intensity that feels visceral and personal, allowing participants to sense the narrative on a profound level. So, to help us explore the concept of intensity, I'm thrilled to welcome Jeroen van Hasselt, an award winning game designer across multiple industries: video games, reality TV shows, and escape room experiences. Jeroen is co founder of Entered, and he specializes in creating tense game mechanics that makes players navigate the space in unusual ways. With Demise of the Greisers, they blend multiple design philosophies in combination with next level player equipment to create a long form immersive game unlike anything else. So grab your virtual seats and let's get started. Jeroen, welcome to Being Immersed.
Thank you. Wow, what an introduction. I feel honored. Actually being blushing a little bit at the moment, but yeah, glad to be here. And I love to talk about this subject and topic a lot. So yeah, let's dive in there, I would say.
I'm really intrigued by the emotional impact an experience can have on an audience. And from what I've heard from my good friend Tommy Houghton, who's been on Being Immersed, the experiences you've created do this in a really unique way. So, what inspired you to focus on creating real life horror games, and how did Entered come to be?
That's a good question. I think I should take you back a little bit when I was still in university myself, and I was studying video game design. And my specialty already was I already had fascination with horror, the emotional fear from a young child. But I also did my master and my thesis about horror. So from there, I was already intrigued because as a creator, you want to achieve emotions or responses in your players' reactions or your audience's reactions. And horror, in that sense, is a very pure genre, so to say, because it centralizes on the emotion of fear and all its facets and ways. But what really struck me is, or strike me, was not per se to make people scared or have that feeling of emotion, but what comes after that. Because if you think about it, when you as a person grow or you feel victorious or you expand your boundaries, usually it's when you've done something that was scary just before, something you never done before. And this could be like, talking in front of a public or asking your date out for the first time. But also, I feel after a horror experience, what I noticed when people were scared, afterwards, they really had this feeling of victoriousness and strength and power. And they felt like they pushed their boundaries a lot. And that to me was super interesting. So from there on out, I was like hooked to the genre. And I felt like, okay, this is interesting. We should do something more with this.
Mhm.
And well, like I said, I started out with video games. Actually, worked for 7 to 8 years in the video game industry. Made my own horror game as well. Also worked actually in the USA for 2.5 years in Phoenix, Arizona. Worked on a Metroidvania kind of game, which also I'm going to look back to it later because that also was a bit of an inspiration for Demise of the Greisers. But at some point, because I was always in my free time building lots of immersive adventures for my friends, I mean, with no budget at all, but they were super into it. And in those moments together, we realized like doing adventures together in real life and also doing new things together, like really creating memories, that to me felt super powerful. And as soon as I learned that you could do this in real life, like escape rooms or immersive theater experiences, I thought, okay, maybe I want to also go into that space, but obviously with a different design ethic. I was not so interested in making puzzle rooms, but very much interested in making these horror games like video games, but then in real life. So I think the best way you could describe our games, and we come to that later, is as if you're playing a video game, but without any of the digital aspects.
Right. Okay. I love this. It's like a fully embodied experience, and I'm a thrill seeker, so totally love this time of year, where you get those tingles, you get the butterflies, like you said. Just before this, my butterflies were going live, right? Um,
Exactly, yeah.
you've told me a little bit about your 6 principles that I think you wrote in your thesis. Do you
Yeah.
design majority of your games around those? And if so, can you describe them a little bit?
Yes, of course. So when I did my thesis, indeed, I came to the conclusion that first I make the definition of, okay, what is horror
Right.
in entertainment form? And horror is entertainment to experience the emotion of fear. So we all agree it's entertainment. We're doing this for fun purposes, which is interesting because normally you don't really want to feel afraid, but we're still doing this. Why? Because we know it's safe. That's the key element that comes to entertainment. We know we're not actually getting killed or hurt or anything. So we're doing this for entertainment purposes. And then we're doing to experience the emotion of fear in all facets. So fear is a primary emotion like love and anger, but it consists out of secondary and tertiary emotions. And I think that was very interesting because then you can also think about anxiousness or dread or apprehension or disgust or nervousness or terror or panic. Now, you get the gist of it.
Yeah.
And from that on, I felt like, wait, we can design so many different horror experiences that don't per se lean into the gore or about jump scares at all. So that's the start. And then I felt like, okay, if we're talking about interactive experiences and horror games, so looking at video games, but also looking at real life games or anything that's interactive, I came to these 6 ingredients that I feel that every horror game needs, and some can have more of it or less, but I feel all 6 should be present.
Yeah.
And those are mysterious or mystery. Yeah, mystery. You need a mystery. You need the unknown, the unpredictability, the uncertainty, the darkness, or anything. There should be a mystery about anything. That's where it always starts.
Mhm.
And the second thing, and I think we'll talk about this a lot later as well, is the suspense of disbelief. So you need to believe in the moment that what you're seeing is real to really feel the emotions. So you need a strong sense of place, or you need to be immersed, or it needs to be relatable, or a real life connection. That's important. Because say, for example, you're building this, we have an abandoned hospital, and in this abandoned hospital is about a doctor, but all of a sudden there is a sci-fi car in the hospital there that would kill the suspense of disbelief. Like, you're wondering, why is the sci-fi car there? You're wondering why, and you're out of
Right.
the
What world am
yeah.
I in? Yeah.
Exactly. The third one, and I feel that one is like very important because a lot of haunted houses forget about this one, and that's the anticipation. So the foreshadowing, the actual build-up, the suspense that something is going to happen. And movies do this very well because the very good horror movies, they have very little jump scares, just a few, but the build-up to those moments is excellent. It's
Yeah.
superb. And then we have shock, which includes the jump scares. You do need a tension release at some point. You cannot build up tension the whole time. At some point, you just you have to release it. So it needs to be a reveal or revelation or a surprise or a shock moment or a twist. That's all fine. And then we have the fifth one, which is very important for interactive experiences, and that's that you need actual consequences or danger. You need a threat, you need an enemy or something negative that will happen if you don't follow the game rules. Yeah. And that's important because in a movie, you don't have that much. You have maybe consequences for the main characters, but not for yourself as a viewer. But if you're actually in an interactive game, you have negative consequences for you. Maybe you lose, something you worked for, some resources, or maybe, it can be anything, obviously. We can talk about this later.
Mhm.
And then the last thing, I felt the sixth one, and this is a bit discussed, how do you say this, up for discussion, but tension is my sixth ingredient. And tension is not exclusive to horror, but if you're feeling tense, and tension in the sense of that you really care and it's about the outcome and you really hope that you're sitting at the point of your seat or you're really invested, it turns out you're super susceptible to the emotion of fear. So the more you feel, the more tense you feel, the more easily you also experience other emotional fear because they kind of overlap. And a lot of other research has been done about this. But I felt like tension is such a cool key ingredient that that's why it's a 6-1 for me. Some people say you can also do without, but I feel it's very almost essential.
Yeah, okay, so I love learning about these up front, so we all can be thinking about those 6 principles as we dive into horror. But even just the 6 you shared, to me, it seems like those 6 could also play beyond horror into other genres to create intensity. So let me just pop up the Mentimeter so we could get some audience participation. While we dive into horror for the rest of the hour, I would love for you guys to think about um, beyond horror, what are other genres that create intensity when you think about Jeroen's 6 principles? So use the code to answer the question, and also feel free to post questions in the chat for Jeroen, and we'll be sure to get to them at the end of the session. But let's actually dive into this ideal genre for intensity, horror. It's an important so mystery, anticipation laced throughout the story. I think your experience, I Can Hear You, does that really well. Let's take a look at the video and then we'll discuss it.
This is Jonathan, reporting for the Red Eye on the case of the abandoned hospital in Belgium. Our research led us to a disturbing case. But things appear to be far worse than we ever could have imagined. I fear we might not make it out alive.
It's like he kept a record of everything. I still don't understand what he's doing here. Maybe we've been asking the wrong questions.
We need to press further. We've tried to get into his mind. All the pieces are here, but it appears the mad doctor has taken precautions to keep anyone from getting into that room. The horrors we discovered here, what he has done, there's no return from that.
I can't take it anymore.
We need to keep going.
I'm leaving. Right now!
I'm warning you. You must not cry.
I don't know about you, I think they're gonna totally find them in the closet right there. So this was your first real life game, and horror is such a unique way of resonating with people, particularly during this season that celebrates fear and supernatural. What were some of the learnings having this one be, moving from video games to in real life games? Did you adopt some things? Did you change things? What did you learn?
Yeah, well, I learned a lot of things. Probably some things that we should have learned earlier because we could have looked at escape rooms that have doing the same thing. I mean, the biggest difference, obviously, going from video games to real life games is that not just we don't have a screen, but in a video game, players can take all the time they want because it's their own time. They're at home, they can do it whenever they want, they can quit, they can come back. And here you actually go to a place, but you have a limited form of time. And we need to ensure that the players have a good time within that booking slot that they have booked. So that for us meant that we had to gradually shift the terms of intensity for the game also and balance that very well with how well the players could cope with that intensity and the fear factor, and also how well they understood the game. So we had to make sure that we ensured that the tutorial of our game was super clear and super strong, and players could not continue unless they understood the tutorial. And we had that from a video game design. Like you also have, like in a video game, when you cannot complete the tutorial, you cannot complete the game, or you cannot continue. But in here, we also had to ensure that the tutorial was fun, because players were already paid, they already started. And I was a little bit stubborn in that time, that I felt that we didn't need a hint system. So up until, we had no hint system for I Can Hear You. So it really meant iterating a lot to ensure that everything was elegantly designed and people understood it. And it worked. It went very well, especially the first year. We were completely sold out, so that's good. We had a very simple task, because if people are very stressed and they have experiencing fear, they cannot cope. Their IQ capacity or the brain capacity goes down a lot, so they have to need very simple tasks. But something that I did not predict was the development or the course of I Can Hear You. Over the years, the actors actually got a lot better. So they got more scarier as well. And they got better in roles, how to anticipate the groups of people, how to ensure the right level. And at some point, pretty much every weekend, there was maybe one group, or every week there was maybe one group that managed to actually complete I Can Hear You. And the others did not, because they were just so scared the whole time. And it became like a reputation for this game. Like, it was really a terror game, and super scary, super intense. But I was worried, because, hey, are people still, do they feel they got their money's worth? And it turns out they did, because their main goal for coming towards this game, because of the reputation, was that they wanted to feel a sense of tension and fear that was just outside of their comfort zone, and that the actors could feel really well. And if it was too and then even if they've not completed the game afterwards, they would still have this sense of victory, or still the sense of like, whoa, I done it. And of course, sometimes we in the beginning, you misjudge it a little bit. Maybe you go over it, or you go you didn't have, well, actually most of the time we went over it too much, so we had to tone it back a little bit. But you learn from it, and that was also a big learning for us. Like, hey, we actually have these actors, and we have to teach them, because they're humans, they're super smart. It's not like an AI in a video game you have to program. We can actually tell them to improvise and say like, hey, tone it down a little. Let's ensure that they can actually complete the game or feel less scared. So those two things were probably the biggest learnings for us. Like, we actually have to make sure that you deliver enough content within the time window, and that you have actors that you can use as super smart computers.
Yeah, do you have any tips for people who are working with actors for the first time in immersive experiences?
So the way I can only tell how we do it
Yeah.
in general senses. And I always like to create a vivid backstory and a world building for our game, but also for the characters, so that actors can draw a lot of inspiration from where this person is coming from. And not all actors like that, but most of them do. And in any sense, it will give you a lot of inspiration for them to come up with something in those cases that a player or a group does something you did not expect, or is off script, and then they can improvise. Improvisation is also one of the most important things for an interactive experience, because you don't know, the players are not going to always follow the script. They come in there, they are all different people, they have different chemistry together. Maybe some of them have a bad day, some have a good day, so they come in with completely different vibes all the time, and you have to ensure that they have a good time and play the game within that parameters you set. So that's the second thing. You set parameters for what your actor can do. What is an action that is allowed? But don't make it too descriptive. Don't say you always have to do it specifically in this way. No, we always talk about the goal or the vibe that you want to give off. And then they can just, do it their own way, because some actors do it this way, other actors have this one in the personality. So if you have a nice world building or a nice background for your character, and good parameters, like this is the behavior or the kind of behavior that we want to showcase to our audience, then they can just go wild, and yeah, they'll love it.
So another one of your projects, the Nightmare of Eveline, the Nightmare of
Yes.
Evelyn Shadow. It's pretty fascinating because you actually dive into a very large location, the Marriott Renaissance Hotel. So let's take a look at that and we'll kind of continue on.
When the guests arrived at the hotel, they found it to be a little strange.
Welcome, everyone. What can I do for you?
So we heard there's a famous guest here.
Usually I never share this kind of information. But you're absolutely right. Evelyn Shadow, the famous novelist, has been staying here for quite some time. I'm just assuming, really assuming that she isolates herself to really get into those characters that she's writing.
Is it me or is it getting colder?
The room seemed ordinary to them at first, until they heard a sound coming from under the bed. No, wait. Until they heard the thumping sound outside their door.
Tom? Tom? What's going on?
I think we should split up and cover more ground.
Are you kidding me? No, don't touch that. She realized she made a mistake.
Come, come, my darlings. This was only the beginning. Your story hasn't even been written yet.
Okay, just in my opinion, never split up. But I kind of feel like you have to because the environment is so vast and open when you think about the Marriott Renaissance Hotel. You know, what was your approach in designing an experience that's so big, and how did you kind of create that tension and unease over time in such a large space?
Good question. Very good question. So first off, this was not just me as a designer. This was a collaboration between two other designers. So me, Alexander Gierholz, and Maggie Pepelanova. And Alex was actually the first person to get us together. And we all are very, how do you say this, different, but also we like each other's styles a lot, but we complement each other quite a bit. For example, I'm really about the game mechanics and what players do in terms of the gameplay. And Maggie was really good at connecting those, like the gameplay with the story, to maybe make them fit together. And Alex, for example, is very strong with the mood and the vibe and get a strong ending. So that already was a very different project for us. But obviously, because we have such a big space, we want to lean into it. So actually the feeling of all these big empty spaces that look the same, that feel the same, that is already quite eerie. So we really felt like this is an eerie game we're going to create. In terms of the fear emotion, we really felt like, okay, the feeling of walking down the gallows, like you're walking towards something, you know that's going to happen, it's going to be, not a very good outcome. And I Can Hear You was, the game mechanics was really about, it's already, the title says it already, about the sound that you make. So you have to be very wary about what kind of sound you're making. Nightmare of Evelyn Shadow, it was about the feeling of being in a book. So to illustrate that, maybe the invitation, you would come to, you've booked this experience and you'll be invited to come over to play this game. But there's something strange about this invitation because it names all of you, your whole group, but it's written in third person. So it says like they arrived at the lobby and they set this password and then they would, look, say about Evelyn Shadow. Exactly. Like, okay, this is exactly what we need to do, I guess. And you do this. And then at some point you notice like maybe story bits like projected on the wall, or like you see in a trailer on lampshade. And these are, again, are mentioning things that you either just had done or just had just happened. Like, oh, that's strange. It says here something that literally just happened to me. Or it says something you would hear like an audio, like you would hear the voice of Evelyn Shadow over the speakers telling something that is happening right now. Like, hey, this is happening right now. I see something in the distance, and the voice says it. Oh, wait, at the end of the hallway, I saw a shadow. Okay, now that's interesting. And then at some point, you'll read something or hear something that hasn't happened yet, or is not happening right now. So I guess this must still happen in the future. And then it became super interesting, because this really lent into the key ingredient of anticipation, this build-up. And we played a lot with that. We always talked about this bathroom that they had to some point find. And there was so much anticipation about this particular bathroom. It was a really cool bathroom, by the way. But people were already scared just by opening the door of the bathroom as soon as they know, like, yeah, this is the bathroom that they were talking about all the time, you know? And then it says, like, the tallest one of the group was the first one to enter. And that's also interesting, because there's always going to be a tallest one, you know? Who is it, you know? And yeah, it
never
was super
me.
interesting. So it's good. Maybe then you don't have to be the first one. But yeah, that's how we played into that. And having the story bits, and actually then we turned the big space of all these similar rooms into a very strong vibe. The Shining obviously is also a big inspiration, but we could always direct them, because rooms have room numbers. So at some point you would have to check into and find your own room, and you had to spend the night, well, you had to spend a moment in the experience on your own, in your own bedroom, which was obviously going to be super scary. But yeah, I think that eerie vibe of so much space that you don't know where anything is going to be, that totally worked for this game a lot.
And I love how immersive experiences are really starting to take on real world locations instead of just having a black box. How can we imagine? So, how did you guys choose the hotel? Like, and get permission? Like, what was that process like?
Well, I have to be honest, we were lucky. The hotel kind of chose us. So
That's
that's,
fantastic.
yeah, and we've been lucky since then. Like, I Can Hear You, that was something we picked because Tim, the co-owner of Entered, he is living nearby and he saw an opportunity, and that's how we kind of met. But for the Marriott, they love the stuff that me and Alex been doing, and they invited us to design something for them during COVID time, because they had a whole wing that was empty, was not being used, and they were going to renovate it. So we could go loose, because everything was going to be changed anyway. So that was perfect. Fortunately, it only ran during those times as well, so not for too long of a time. And yeah, for the Mice and the Greisers, they also found us. Every time we start to look ourselves, it doesn't really work out. But if they find us, then yeah, they are on board very much.
Well, I mean, this is like a call to everyone who has real estate just sitting empty. Artists are waiting and willing, ready to design an immersive experience for you, which is awesome.
For sure, 100%.
I feel like Eveline's was definitely a balance between narrative progression with player freedom. You know, they could go in different directions, but it sounds like you also directed them depending on rooms.
Yeah.
The goal, how do you kind of create that presence of Eveline when she wasn't there? She was always watching, but out of sight. How did you kind of create her presence and to be known?
Yeah, so it was her book she was writing, so it's her
Okay.
novels, and so you do hear a voice indeed sometimes, and yes, she wrote the script and the story for you, and obviously, the script wants you to do things that at some point you might not be okay with doing, you know, at some point, but in the beginning you have to progress in order to find out more, because the goal for that game was to actually find Evelyn Shadow. You're there to find the famous writer, and she is there somewhere in the hotel. So the game would always end with a confrontation with her. How the confrontation would go, that was many different things, depending also how well you were a character for her, or played along the rules, or you were like rebelling and not doing, you maybe like you were the tallest person, but you did not go into the bathroom, even though the script told you, which is interesting because everything works within that realm. And yeah, that led to a confrontation with Evelyn Shadow eventually, and yeah, maybe some betrayals between your teammates. Different things could happen.
So you worked with other creators, you co-authored this with other creators, and I often am teaching students who have very different expertise to collaborate together. And speaking of tension, I'm sure there's tensions in even the creative process. How did you actually learn to respect each other's perspective? Like what advice would you give to young creators who are collaborating with people with different expertise?
So definitely we had tensions as well. There was a lot of creative differences too. And the good thing though was if all three of us liked it, it was genuinely a very, very good idea. So that was good. But we definitely learned a lot from the process. And afterwards we talked about it and we felt the process could definitely go smoother because we went in it treating each other as equals and also feeling like we have equal say on everything. But to make the process more efficient the next time. So before, for example, now that I'm going to collaborate with Alex again on a new project, we create these divisions. So we say like, okay, for example, Jeroen, you're in charge of the game mechanics and the level design, which means you have final veto and final say. Everybody can come up with ideas. That's fine. But we have to move on, and we trust each other that your final say is going to be a good one. It might not be to my taste or to somebody else's taste, but it's going to be a good thing. Alex might be in charge of the story or something else, and everybody would have their thing. That's something we agreed on, to have a bit of a hierarchy structure, or at least make somebody responsible for a certain area. And the second thing that actually I know, that's the way I worked before this, but we didn't apply it in this collaboration. But I feel that Meg was very good at this to bring this up. To have a shared vision, like, okay, first we're going to have a vision for this project, what this project is going to be about. And this is something I also learned when I was in the US. I worked for a different creative director, and one of the first things he told me is like, Jeroen, I like your design, I like your style, but you need to lose your ego. You really need to lose your ego. Like, he kicked it out of me and stop it. You have to stop thinking that you need to be the person that comes up with all the ideas. And
It's great.
Yeah, that was very great advice, because he said the goal of a good creative director is to make sure that you have a vision for your project and everybody in your team understands that vision and buys into the vision and loves that vision, so they can all contribute and everybody can bring in ideas, because then you have multiple brains that can have the ideas to contribute. It can even be, like your mother or whatever. Everybody understands the vision that you're doing. Everybody can have an idea. You as a creative director have to ensure that everybody understands that the idea they bring in works with the vision, or could be a potentially good idea. And then your goal as the creative director is to also recognize that it's a good idea. Like, hey, this is a good idea. And then lose the ego, give credit to everyone. And that to me worked so well. And since then on, that's the way we do it in our team. We first build a vision, and we could talk a lot about it for the Mice That Rise, because we had a very clear vision of what we're going to build. And from there on out, the best ideas came in because it fit for the vision we wanted to create.
Mm-hmm. So Demise of the Greisers was what really got me interested in your work, because I sat down with Tommy and he told me that he signed up for a 2-hour and the time flew and they didn't even go to their next activity they were supposed to do, and they were in 4 hours, and he was like, you don't even realize how long it is. It's so intense and you're so in the middle of it. So it's a great example, and I want everyone to take a look. And I tell you, I'm hopping on a plane and heading to Belgium to see this one. So you'll have to meet me there. So let's take a look at that and then dive in. From what I've heard, it's easy for people to get lost in this experience and lose all sense of time, which is a great mark of an immersive experience. I can imagine that it would be difficult to keep a pulse on each audience member to gauge their threshold and adapt the experience accordingly without interfering with the immersion that you offer there. So what challenges, do you face when balancing fear with fun, especially when you want to keep players immersed but not too scared, like that keep that tension but have it continue for such a long period of time?
Yeah. Also, good question. Something we learned during developing the Might Rise, and not that something was immediately present in its first months. So, firstly, Tommy's playthrough was very interesting because indeed they completely lost track of time, and that's the biggest compliment we can get. And we get that a lot. We ask him, how long do you think you've been there? And people say, like, you can tell me everything. If you tell me I was in there the whole night, if I was in there for 5 hours, I have no idea. So that's a good thing. And I think what started with is I remember when I told you that I look at different types of emotions of fear.
Yeah.
And already, because our design goal, so we have 3 design pillars for designing the Mice Crisis. First thing, we knew we were going to make a real life horror game. What type of horror game, we didn't know yet. I'll come to this in a bit.
Yeah.
Second, we have an abandoned train shunting yard with actual trains. You saw it in the trailer. It's just only a short trailer because we're still working on the longer version. But we have actual trains from the 80s, locomotives, wagons, and we could use them. We drove them in a hangar. The hangar was completely empty, and we built the whole world inside itself. And that was so we knew we wanted to do something with trains in terms of the story, but also in terms of the gameplay. I'll come to that back later as well. And the third design pillar is that we wanted to create a feeling of a world. We felt, okay, we're going to do the next step. We're going to be more ambitious. This is also where the Metroidvania thing comes back in, which I learned in the USA I was working on a Metroidvania type of game. We want to create a feeling of a world where you can explore and go, do your own missions, go off and do multiple things, but also learn skills and become better at it. And then unlock items that takes you further to different spaces. So already we are asking a lot from the player. If they're going to learn something, and also world in such a long time. So I felt in terms of the horror, we could not do the same as in with I Can Hear You, which was full on terror. People would get, that was 90 minutes to 2 hours, they were done. They reached their limits.
You're going to give me a heart attack by the end. I get it.
Exactly. So we chose the emotion apprehension as our central focus, which means to feel anxious about something potentially unpleasant that might happen to you in the future. And that's truly what the game is about in terms of the horror. I mean, we have some other emotions in there as well for short blips, but the focus of also the game and the main thing that you're doing is that you feel you always have these consequences lingering above your head. And depending on the actions you would do, some of those negative consequences you don't want to happen might happen. And then shit, you're like, now new consequences are hovering above your head, and you have to act, you have to decide soon, because otherwise something worse might happen. But the feeling that at every point in time, if you don't play well, or you don't, within the rules of the game, obviously, something bad might happen, that's much more bearable than actual bad things happening to you. You just have to you always have this tension, you have to be careful and on the spot. And that really helped with the immersion as well, because in any case, you are playing this game. Now, I guess at some point I have to explain what you're actually doing, because otherwise it's
I know, because I'm like, okay, you're giving me a lot of agency, and I'm consequential in the experience, and I have choice. It sounds like you could go off in so many different directions.
Which is not true, but it feels it. So our importance was you have to have the feeling that there's always something more to explore. But actually, the game opens up more like a tree. Like in the beginning, it's actually almost always the same. You have some little agency, but the more you unlock and the more things you find, the more different paths it could go. And in the end, it's like, like a tree.
Yeah.
So that's probably the way to go about it. And also, we have a lot of solo moments in the game. So maybe you decide, Erin, you want to go off on this mission, and you lose the rest of your team, and you get this very great solo experience with a character that might not be an enemy, but also not your friend and is neutral,
right.
Or whatever, and you do something, and this other person has this completely other thing going on. And that actually strengthens the feeling of a world, because once you come back together, you have this reunion. You're like, oh, I did this and that, and the other this, and you tell, and then it feels bigger. Like, wait, I could also have done that, and you could also have done this, and it just adds up to having all these events happening in the world, making it feel like like a bigger
Makes it a
world.
very replayable experience too. I want to go back and have a sense of what my friend did, totally missed
Yeah.
that space.
Yeah, for sure. But to come back to your first part of the other part of the question, like how do we make this ebb and flow, and how do we ensure that every group has, we change the fear level. What we did is, instead of all our other games where pretty much everybody is an enemy or like a neutral, we created a character, an NPC that's actually on your side. So we created a friend.
Nice.
And because there's so much, the game is quite complex, and we ask a lot from the players. This character, who also is going into this world with you for the first time, he's an actor. He of course he knows what it is, but he in the story he doesn't know. He's with you trying to figure things out, and he can ask, or she can ask questions to make you think, just to steer you a little bit to a different direction. And you can also provide info to this character, which is like your agent, your red eye agent. And this character might always provide you info back or feedback back that is useful, or something you have maybe sent them off to research or anything. And that really helped a lot, because now we do have ears and eyes on your team, and this character can see like, hey, wait, this person. So at some point, for example, Tommy felt like he had done enough exploring. His tension level was, he had at a moment he needed a breather. So this character then can give him a mission that he turned out to be more of an operator in the headquarters, and sit down and still help his team and still be of benefit and making impact. So this character is just genius for this.
So is this character, I noticed that there's some gear that enhances the sense of intensity. Is that where the character is coming through? Is the technical gear, the player equipment?
Well, he also has the technical gear for sure. The tech gear is part of the organization that gives you that, but it's a different character that gives you that. We have multiple characters.
Oh, wow. Okay, so
Yeah.
so let me make sure I understand. The character that is helping you, the NPC, how in the experience are you interacting with them? They just appear in different spaces?
They can appear and reappear. There's usually a spot where you can find them, but he also goes off onto his own missions. He's very good at finding you at the right moment. So
Is it a live character?
Yeah, he's a live character for sure. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's always an actor that plays this, but he's very good at finding the people at the right moment when they feel they need help, or they see like, hey, they're just a little bit stuck. Let's keep the flow going. And it's the most difficult role, actually. It's more difficult than playing the enemies or the crazy ones, because this person has to keep mental check of everything that's going on within the group.
So, and I love it. So it sounds like the operating room was like a type of safe zone. So thinking about safety when you're developing these in real life games, you need moments of relief. But instead of just taking them out of the experience, you built it within the narrative to create a consistent world. The world building in this is pretty amazing. Let's talk a little bit about this player equipment. It's I saw it in the trailer that there was this advanced player equipment. Does that help enhance the sense of immersion and intensity for the player?
For sure, if it works, because we also had a lot of headaches in the beginning when it didn't work.
Is what I say.
Yeah, exactly. These tech issues, and then it's not as immersive, because then it's pulling you out because it's not working.
Yeah.
But now we are at a level, like, still players sometimes come up with things that we didn't imagine they would do, or just tech breaks because you're wearing it. But now we have a way to fix that in an immersive way as well. So that's very good. Everything, if something doesn't properly work immediately, we're also going to fix it in an immersive way that still keeps you in the story, and players believe it actually belonged to the game. It actually is a part of the game or part of the story. So that's cool. But if it works, then it enhances a lot more, because again, we felt we have a very cool story to tell. But if players always go off separately and they don't some, like I said, you're on a solo mission, you find something. We always wanted that if they find a piece of the story or an important piece of the mystery, that everybody should get it. So we came up with a way that we have these radio messages, and they can transfer any pieces of story through a radio transceiver to your whole team. So your team actually gets it also audio, so they have the voice message, and they can read along on their sleeve that they're wearing as well. So that already was such a great thing that everybody can enjoy, and they can even push it away if they don't want to at the moment, or they can re-listen to it later. So that's what you need to do if you're building this open world thing. We didn't know this from the beginning, but later we figured out we need to do this way, because that's how players play it, and we want to ensure that everybody at least has a chance. It should be their choice if they want to engage with this or not. And the second thing, I guess I can say this now, because it's not maybe obviously from the trailer, but you saw some pulley clamps going over a wire.
Yeah.
Just a short thing, like 4 of them with a red light on it. And it's interesting because I told you that I wanted to do something with trains for the gameplay as well. And if you think of it on an abstract level, because that's what we wrote down for the vision, what is a train? A train is a transport vehicle that brings something from A to B. But the unique thing about a train is that it's attached to a track or a railway line, whereas boats and planes and cars, they're free to move. So we felt we should limit the player movement as well in the same way. What if we attach the players to a track in the same way? And what if the tracks, they have to follow tracks or transfer from different tracks to things and use it as a gameplay? So that was the start of the inspiration of the game. And minor spoiler here, but I think also because it will help to create a better understanding of what this game is about. In this game, to infiltrate this cult, the Greisers, because the Greisers, I actually didn't explain this to you guys, but Greisers are train fanatics, and you're trying to infiltrate this cult that really worship trains. But to infiltrate, you have to connect yourself to a track to bypass their security system, but it's a double-edged sword, because from there on out, you're attached to a track. And if you detach and you want to switch railway lines, so you want to change train tracks, you hear a timer. You hear a timer in your earphones, like 8, 7, 6,
Oh,
5.
that creates tension.
Exactly, that's the apprehension, because there's going to be a consequence, because if it reaches 0, the alarm will go off, and the Greisers built this to ensure that no cargo gets derailed unnoticed. So you immediately have to find a new track. And a new track leads to new places. But what if you can't see the track yet? What if there's like darkness and you just have to try it and go for it? And it's beautiful. It creates so many moments without actually something happening, but the thought that it could happen, because if you're not fast enough, something will happen, because the alarm will go off, and then the Greiser will come, and then the next roads of consequences are lingering above your head. So I hope now finally it starts coming together a little bit, how this game works and how we designed it with apprehension and trains in mind.
I love it. That remind you really have to kind of probably help each other out for a lookout to make sure, but while you're jumping, it reminds me of when I was a kid, my uncle would take me on midnight, me and 21 cousins on midnight patrols. And the cops knew we would do it, and we'd have to always be watching out for each other and run to the next thing, so it's like, get on that track, find the right way. It's awesome.
Exactly. That's what happens a lot in the game as well. People helping each other out, or giving a light because you have your own light. Like, hey, here's the next track, come here. Or, hey, come to safety, wait, there's a Greiser coming, or stuff like this. Yeah, it's very fun.
Well, it's been a pleasure to hear your thoughts on intensity, and especially the month of October for Halloween and what horror is. I don't know about you, but we'll be definitely hitting a few this weekend. What's coming up next for you?
Next up, so our previous experiences are all closed, but we're bringing back I Can Hear You. We find a new venue. We're actively building at the moment. So the trailer of the first game, that game is coming back. It's being built very near to Demise of the Greisers as well. So excited to bring that one back, because there's still a lot of people now that want to experience it after our Demise of the Greisers fame, because that definitely is one of our flagships. And we're also collaborating with Alex, who's famous from Amsterdam Catacombs. There's also a horror game. We generally have the same vision. And we're going to collaborate under a new name. And all these games are going to be under this brand, because we feel like if players like Demise of the Risers or I Can Hear You, they're always asking like, hey, why aren't there more of these type of experiences? Because they know escape rooms, but this really is not it's not an escape room. Really have to say it, even though there's a lot of overlap, there's a lot of chance if you like escape rooms, you're going to like this one too. But if they really want these type of games, then they have to look for the games that we are building currently, at least. I hope more people are going to build these type of games. And we're collaborating on a new one, which is going to be built in Amsterdam. Can't say much about except that it's going to be a paranormal type of game. So that's a new angle for us.
Nice.
And yeah, we're going to also announce a new name about this very soon. And other than that, I think that's already quite a bit. Oh, of course, I still do for clients. So we have a new TV show coming up. And we're going to build on the 3rd season of Destination X. Destination X is actually a format that we came up with and designed for Belgium television. And it's also coming to AMC in the US. They filmed this September. So probably in March somewhere it's going to be on AMC, the 1st season for the USA viewers.
Nice. So viewers definitely keep an eye out for Jeroen and Entered's projects coming up. I know we've been totally all about horror, but beyond horror, let's jump to this Mentimeter really quick and see what other genres our audience thought creates intensity. So I'm looking at drama, thriller movies, video games, just video games.
Video games can be tense for sure, yes.
I'll be tense. Exactly. Let's talk about drama a little bit. Do you see some similarities or differences between horror and drama?
Definitely, for the sense that drama also wants to evoke an emotional response, for sure. Like that's what drama is a lot about.
Right.
But drama is more broad. It could be a sad or it could be a love, and it definitely plays within those two ranges a lot. I find it a little bit harder to specify, because drama is mostly a genre that is known within the TV or theater world, and which is mostly the non-linear, the non-interactive medium. So reality TV can also be a thing, but drama in terms of interactive experience or video games is not that much known. You have drama in the story, but it's not known as a genre. I think the game genres or interactive experience genres always classify themselves by the thing that you do mostly. You're doing either a puzzle game or a strategy game or a role-playing game.
Type of experience.
Yeah. So it works a little bit differently, but I definitely think tension is a big part of drama, because good drama means that you're involved with the outcome, and to have tension, you're also involved with the outcome. You care about what's going to happen. You're invested, but the chances of succeeding, of succession, are slim, but definitely not zero, and that creates the most tension. And this can be for a football match as well. Like you're watching a football match, and they can score, and they just broke the line of defense, and it's about to happen, and you can be even more invested if it's the team that you're for. Like this is your team that you really want. This is the championship. Then it can be super tense. But it has nothing to do with horror or anything. So
yeah, maybe we need to create an immersive experience for Friday Night Lights, which was drama. It would go over really well here in Texas, I'm just saying.
Nice.
So I'm looking at a few of the questions in the live stream, and I keep on saying horror, but I'm curious, do you differentiate between horror and thriller, and do you feel like you do both, or one more than the other?
Thriller is definitely also a big part of horror. Like again, thriller is more a genre that's known in books and movies, and I don't know, I did some research back then in the day, and what I found is that people mostly say like thriller stays away from the supernatural and the monsters and the gore and disgust. But in general, like I said, our definition that we came up with during my thesis or my definition is horror is entertainment to experience the emotion of fear. And if fear in any sense, like the like dread or disgust or apprehension is a key element, I say you already have horror elements in your game. And if your main goal of your game is to ensure that your audience or your players experience the emotion of fear, then you have a horror game. And it doesn't matter if your audience doesn't think it's scary. You have child's book like Goosebumps. Is Goosebumps? Yeah, the book Goosebumps. Probably if I read it, I won't be scared reading it. But the goal of the author was to scare its audience. So it's still a horror book. So sometimes you have this discussion when people are watching a horror movie and it's like, that was not horror. I didn't find it scary at all. But that's beyond the point. It's not about what you think. It's about what the intention of the creator or author is. And if it was to evoke a response of fear in all its facets.
Right, in all its facets, which goes back to your 6 principles, which I think we've covered in all
Yes,
the different
indeed.
types of experiences you've created today. So thank you so much, Jeroen, for sharing your insights on intensity in immersive experiences. We're going to post this
Very
live
welcome.
stream on Texas Immersive's Patreon, so sign up to be a member for free to receive more of our thought leadership on the emerging field of immersive media and experiences. And thanks to all of you, our participants, for your engaging questions and enthusiasm. Let's keep this spirit of exploration alive as we continue to push the boundaries of immersive storytelling. So we have plenty of exciting events lined up for Texas Immersive Institute. Be sure to follow us on our social media at Texas Immersive. And I'm already following you, but for those who want to follow you, what's yours?
You can follow us on our Instagram. It's entered.rlg. entered.rlg. And we're also on Facebook. I think it's Entered Mosaic on Facebook. Probably put it in the show notes or somewhere in the chat. I can do this. That's where we post most of these things. And we'll probably have some exciting announcements to make there soon as well.
Awesome. Well, until next time, keep exploring and creating immersive wonders. Bye, scary people.